welcome back to Food Prep Guide and welcome back to the Pantry Challenge. We have another meal stretching recipe for you today. This is actually one of my husband's favorite meals. About 12 years ago when I was a newlywed, my new mother-in-law let me know that this was one of my new husband's favorite meals, so I quickly learned how to make it. It is chicken and rice, but it is so flavorful and it is another way to stretch meat. So let's dig into it. I have 2 skillets right here, and that's just because I personally double this recipe every time I make it so that I can send my husband to work with leftovers for a couple of days after. So I have my skillets set to low medium heat, and the first step is 1 stick of butter. You'll see me putting everything again in a separate skillet, but for one recipe it's just 1 stick of butter. Next is half an onion. Half an onion diced onion. Next is a heaping cup of white rice. I'm going to move around the butter a little bit. We want that butter to be nice and melted so our rice doesn't burn. I'm going to let it melt for just a minute before I add that rice. Okay, a heaping cup of rice. And now I'm just going to coat that rice and onion in the butter, in the melted butter. Next, we're going to add 1.5 cups of chicken broth. I've also done this with beef broth before, and it's really good with either one. So 1.5 cups of broth. Next thing we need is onion soup mix. This is just your Lipton onion soup mix. This is just like an off-brand from Aldi's. But we are actually going to reconstitute it with water first. So I just open up a packet and add 1.5 cups of water to it. Whisk that around good. I'm going to do the same thing real quick to the other skillet. I'm going to mix everything around really good before we add the last ingredient, which is our chicken. Now, the original recipe calls for 2 chicken breasts per batch, but I tested it out with 1 chicken breast per batch about a year ago, and nobody even could tell. So 1 chicken breast done the way I'm about to show you is enough to make this a complete meal. Now, you may have heard me mention in a past video that I use my blender for everything, and I'm not kidding when I say everything. I use my blender to chop up and shred chicken. That might sound a little bit weird, but it works, and what it does is it allows that chicken to get cut up into really small pieces so that every bite someone takes, they're getting multiple pieces of chicken in that bite, so that you're not missing that meat. It doesn't feel like you're stretching the meat, you know what I mean? You can't tell. So let me get everything cleared out and ready, set up to cut that chicken. To prepare this chicken to go into the blender, I just cut it into thirds and then pop it in the blender, and we'll talk about that just a second. When you're blending chicken like this, you're going to have to stop the blender and with a spatula kind of push the chicken down and around so it doesn't keep getting stuck underneath the blade. And let me grab a different spatula for that. And I'll show you what I mean about having to stop and start. I don't know if you could hear that, but you're kind of listening for that "I'm stuck" sound from your blender. And then at that point you can just kind of scoop up the meat at the bottom and move that to the top, and move the meat that was at the top that's still in chunks down towards the bottom. Okay, and I'm glad this happened because this happens all the time, so it's good to show. So I have most of this meat in here is completely ground up, but there's a large chunk that is still solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish out that large chunk that hasn't gotten ground up yet. And then I'm going to put all the rest straight into the skillet because it is already ground up. And there we go. Now I'm just going to take my spatula and just break up that chicken, spread it around, get it covered inside that buttery rice mixture. The next step is to let this skillet get back up to a bubbling state, and then I'm going to put the lid on, lower it to a simmer, and cook it for about 20 or 25 minutes with the lid on low heat. Just a note on how to clean the blender when you're done. I mean, I'm sure you already know this, but just in case, since it is raw meat, what I do is I just get some Dawn dish detergent, squirt it in there. I put about 1.5 to 2 cups of boiling water in the blender, run it for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then I just take it to the sink and wash it as usual. I also take a double-sided napkin, spray it down with vinegar, and wipe down all the buttons because more than likely at some point I've touched the raw meat and then the button. So just a little tip for how to clean it. It's already coming up to a boil. I don't have my lid. Hold on just a second. So I'm just going to lower my eye down to about a 3, put the lid on, and set a timer for 20 minutes. And this will be done. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. I've still got to prep the chicken for this other skillet, do the same thing. We'll be back to show you the finished product. Let's check on our skillet. The 20-minute timer just went off, and I forgot to mention that 20 minutes is just a general rule of thumb. That's generally how long it takes for me, but it's done whenever the rice has fully incorporated all of that liquid, and you start to get a slightly golden, not crust, but just slightly golden color to the bottom of that rice and chicken mixture. This is done. Also, just making sure your chicken is cooked through all the way. But another benefit to blending it the way that we did really fine, it cooks very quickly. Okay, let's see how this looks close up. This is chicken, ooh, that steam. This is chicken and rice, one of my husband's favorite meals, and with just a few tweaks we were able to make it a meal stretcher meal, and it is one of our absolute favorites. I hope y'all enjoy. Bye.